What are the benefits that you've seen in patient-to-patient support over clinical support given by your center?
I
I
have
could.
strong feelings. Um, so when you're in the hospital, or in my experience, when I was in the hospital, I had a social worker and a nutritionist, and like honestly, there were just so many people involved that I was like, what part of my body are you talking to right now? I couldn't even get all the things put together. Uh, and that was great for making a plan for me, like to get out of the hospital. But that was all book knowledge and general knowledge of transplant patients. And what I needed was people who had lived it. I needed the lived experience a lot more than the surgeon has done over 500 liver transplants. Because, like, I'm really glad, and that makes them very qualified, but I'm not doing a liver transplant. I'm living with a liver transplant. And for the first time when I started talking honestly to people in a peer-to-peer setting, I could say the things I was really thinking that I didn't feel allowed to say with my transplant center. Like, I'm grieving. It's hard for me to feel like I'm alive because someone else died. Like that was hard to wrap my head around. I have mental health challenges because there's this like mindset of like, you got this great gift, you should be happy and grateful and positive all the time. And I remember thinking, I'm 20 years old, this is a dramatic life change for me, and I lost a lot. And besides just having a good therapist, it was really helpful to just be able to say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not the only one that doesn't feel grateful every single second. Like that I'm dealing with side effects and learning to manage life. And what what do I do when all my friends have tons of energy and I don't? Like, how do I keep from feeling isolated but still protect myself? And that there's something that a peer relationship gives that a knowledgeable expert does not give, because we're all the experts on our own body. Like, we're the only ones taking care of our whole self. And it's our bodies and our minds and our souls have been piecemealed out to different people to take care of, and we're the one pulling all the pieces together. And so to sit with someone else who's sat in that and goes, yeah, it's really hard to like integrate myself again. I just remember feeling like I could breathe for the first time. Like, okay, this is not the end of my world. It's a different world. I'm not magically cured, but I can choose how I want to live my life. And I have people still that I can call and vent to or chat with online on those bad days. And they're going to hold space for me, and they're going to encourage me, and they're going to curse with me and cry with me. And like all of those different components are important. Whereas, you talk to your medical doctor and they want to know about how your liver function is, how your kidney function is, how your lung function is. And they're looking at data and numbers. And when Allie and Shelby look at me, they go, how are you really doing? What are you feeling today? What's going on? I can tell you're a big fat liar, Brooke. Like, and that's the kind of people I need. And that's what peer-to-peer is all about.
Yeah, I love that. I remember when I was in the hospital right after my transplant, and they'd just given me like this big binder of things to go home, and I had all these questions like, how the heck am I supposed to do this? And I don't even remember if it was like a social worker or a coordinator. I don't remember who was in my room, but she said, no one knows transplants like I know transplants. She'd never had a transplant. I'm like, I don't even know who this person is. And meanwhile, she's handing me all this information and saying, go. And I remember thinking, but I'm not a transplant, I'm a person. And there was that disconnect for me. It was the first time I realized it of my medical team is amazing at medicine. They aren't amazing at being a person with a transplant. And I needed that connection of somebody with a transplant because there's lots of things you don't know until you've lived to them. You don't have like the little tips and tricks and like it works better to take your meds this way. And like these are the best masks to use when you go out and fly. And Like I needed someone who had the practical life tips of this is how you do it to take my hand and walk me through it, as opposed to just, I know transplants because I've read about them on a page. I needed the lived experience to make that connection because I'm not a transplant, I'm a person.
I love this so much. I think for me, I have this expectation whenever I go into a doctor's office, I'm always the youngest one they've ever seen. They forget that I still have a menstrual cycle because most of the people that they see in their, especially like internal medicine clinic, they are older. And a lot of the doctors that I talk to, they will be telling me, how did this happen? What's going on? What happened to you? And it just feels so re-traumatizing every single time to have to explain why I look healthy, but my body has had different plans for what I thought. And this has happened with almost every single doctor I've ever gone into. And talking to a peer where they're like, yep, I've been through these things too, and me not have to explain what's wrong with my body every single time I talk to them, there's just nothing that can compare to that. Also, doctors, a lot of them have a health privilege. Many of them have not been through something that's very traumatizing on their bodies, and so they don't know how to talk to you a lot of the times. They don't know how to say the things that are going to help. I had one doctor that when I had delayed graft function after my kidney transplant, every time I would come in, the nephrologist would tell me, "Why isn't it working? Why aren't you doing?" And I was just like, "You're the doctor, tell me." And it was just really, really challenging when I was just looking for somebody to help support me emotionally because I was so frustrated that it wasn't working. I'd done everything that they had said, and still my body wasn't functioning how they thought that it should. And so, hearing other people's stories and recognizing that I'm not alone, that the way that I've been dealing with these things emotionally has been the very best that I could. And not having to explain myself every single time to people is what has been so healing to me with peer to peer support.